I stood before the heavy oak door of the lawyer's office in downtown Seattle, my heart pounding like it might burst through my chest. Beside me, my 10-year-old son, Ethan, gripped my hand tightly, his small fingers trembling but warm. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the fear clawing at my insides. The rich scent of coffee from the Starbucks on the corner drifted through the crisp October morning air, but it did nothing to soothe the memories flooding back. Memories of a family that had long ago pushed me to the margins of their lives. Today was the reading of my father's will. Robert Bennett, a real estate tycoon who once dominated Seattle's market with multimillion-dollar deals, had passed away a week ago, leaving behind an empire that my family was eager to carve up. I, Sophie Bennett, 38, a freelance journalist living modestly in the suburbs, expected nothing from this will. I wasn't here for money. I was here for a fragile, flickering hope that my father, even just once, had thought of me before he died. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories, they're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. I pushed the door open, Ethan close by my side. Conference room was vast, with a gleaming walnut table and expensive leather chairs, thick with the scent of high-end perfume and simmering tension. The eyes of everyone, my sister Claire Thompson, my uncle George Bennett, and a parade of relatives and old family friends, locked onto me like daggers. No one greeted me. No one smiled. Only a single cutting sentence from Claire, 42, a high-powered attorney with perfectly styled blonde hair and a tailored Chanel suit. She's getting nothing. Dad hated her. Claire's words rang out, sharp and deliberate, as if she wanted them to carve into the air. My chest tightened, but I forced a neutral expression, squeezing Ethan's hand to steady myself. Claire sat at the head of the table, poised like a queen, her red lips curling into a mocking smile. My uncle George, 65, a retired stock market investor, let out a dry chuckle, leaning back in his chair with his hands clasped behind his head, his eyes glinting with contempt. "Even her kid knows she's worthless," he muttered, nodding toward Ethan as if he were an object. Ethan lowered his gaze to the floor, his big brown eyes avoiding the room. My heart broke a little more. I wanted to scream, to shield my son from their venom, but instead I quietly led him to the farthest chair at the end of the long table. The chair creaked as I sat, and Ethan climbed up beside me, his small legs dangling above the floor. He folded his hands in his lap, trying to shrink into himself. I knew he was being strong for me, but his eyes, deep and full of empathy, made me feel small. Claire turned to me, her gaze icy, her smile venomous. "You know this is pointless, right, Sophie? Dad rewrote the will years ago, cut you out completely. To him, you were already dead." Her words stabbed at my heart. I couldn't respond, my tongue felt heavy, useless. I nodded slightly as if I understood, but inside a single question echoed. Why did I even come? I'd sworn never to return to this place, never to let myself be hurt again. But Ethan, with his bright eyes and quiet conviction, had convinced me. "Mom, we should go. Maybe there's something you need to hear." Painful past. To understand why I was here, you need to know my story. 8 years ago, I walked away from the Bennett family, leaving behind the lavish Bellevue mansion where I grew up in wealth but isolation. My father, Robert, was a rigid man, always prioritizing reputation and control above everything else. He built a real estate empire from nothing, and he expected the family to live up to his impossible standards. Claire, my older sister, was his ideal, brilliant, sharp, always eager to please. She graduated from Harvard Law, married Neil Thompson, a Wall Street financier, and became the perfect heir. Me? I was a freelance journalist, chasing authentic stories over profit, valuing freedom over control. To Dad, I was a disappointment. Things got worse when I married James, a talented but struggling artist. Dad called him a loser and forbade the relationship. When my marriage crumbled under endless fights and James's drinking, I turned to Dad for help, showing up on his doorstep with 2-year-old Ethan and a suitcase holding my entire life. I stood there, tears streaming down my face, hoping he'd open his arms. Instead, he looked at me with cold eyes and said, "You chose that path. Don't expect me to fix it." Then he slammed the door. Claire and Uncle George made it worse. Claire spread the narrative that I'd abandoned the family, that I was weak, unable to handle real life. Uncle George, Dad's shadow, echoed his bitter words. "Family doesn't quit. Blood is loyalty." They painted me as a traitor, and no one in the family asked why I left. They didn't know or didn't care that I left to protect Ethan, to give him a life free of criticism and pressure. I built a quiet life for us in a small suburban apartment, working freelance, raising Ethan with love and peace I never had growing up in the Bennett household. Deep down, though, I longed for my father's approval. I dreamed of a day he'd say he was proud of me, that he loved me. When the invitation to the will reading arrived, sent from the office of William Harris, Dad's lawyer, I hesitated. There was no note, just a date, time, and address in Harris's formal handwriting. I thought it might be a mistake or worse, a cruel joke. But Ethan, wise beyond his years, convinced me to go. "Maybe Grandpa left something for you," he said, his voice steady and sure. The will reading. Now, sitting in the cold conference room, I felt like an outsider. People around me, Claire, Uncle George, my cousin Paul, and Dad's old friends, looked at me like I was a stain on their pristine world. William Harris, Dad's lawyer, entered, clutching a thick folder. He was about 60, lean, with tired but sharp eyes. He sat down, adjusted his glasses, and began reading the will in a monotone voice, as if this were just another workday. I barely heard the opening lines. My mind wandered, dragged back to painful memories. Dad refusing to look at me, Claire's smug smiles when I tried to explain. I just wanted this to end so I could leave, hold Ethan, and forget I'd ever hoped. But Harris's voice snapped me back. To my daughter, Claire Thompson, I leave the primary residence in Bellevue and all its contents. Claire didn't move, but I saw her lips twitch upward, and Neil, her husband, gave a smug nod as if they were already planning renovations. To my brother, George Bennett, I leave the lakefront property on Lake Washington and all remaining shares in Bennett Real Estate. Uncle George grinned, popping his cigar back in his mouth, his eyes gleaming like he'd hit the jackpot. I bit my lip, trying to ignore the glances darting my way. They were waiting for the moment I'd be erased completely. And then it came. As previously declared, my daughter, Sophie Bennett, will receive no portion of this estate. Harris's words hit me like a punch to the chest. I'd braced for it, but the reality still hurt more than I'd expected. Claire let out a soft, mocking laugh. "Told you," she whispered to Neil. Uncle George shook his head, his voice louder than necessary. "Takes a certain kind of person to abandon her own father." I stared at the table's wood grain, willing my tears not to fall. Ethan slipped his hand into mine under the table, his touch anchoring me. I wanted to stand, to run from this room, from their eyes and venomous words. But then Ethan moved. He sat up straighter, his voice small but clear, slicing through the tension. "You forgot the video he recorded." The room froze. Claire stopped laughing. Uncle George stopped chewing his cigar. Harris paused, his pen hovering over the page. I looked at Ethan, my mind reeling. "What video, honey?" I whispered, my heart racing. He didn't look at me. His eyes locked on Harris, calm and certain. He reached into his small backpack and pulled out a slightly crumpled white envelope, my father's handwriting scrawled across it. For the lawyer. Only open if things get contentious. The secret USB. I stared at the envelope, feeling like the world was narrowing around it. Dad's handwriting, sharp, unmistakable. Only open if things get contentious. Well, things had gotten contentious. Claire squinted, trying to maintain her composure, but I saw her hands clench. Uncle George leaned forward, growling, "What's this? How do we know it's even real?" Ethan looked at me, his gaze steady. "Grandpa gave it to me a while ago. He told me to keep it safe." I shook my head, trying to piece together the memory. I remembered the day about 6 months ago. I was working remotely, writing an article for a local paper. Ethan had asked to go with our neighbor to drop off a gift at Dad's house. I had no idea they'd spoken, let alone that Dad had entrusted him with something so significant. Harris held out his hand. "May I?" he asked gently. Ethan handed over the envelope without hesitation. The room leaned forward, as if the envelope were a bomb about to detonate. Harris tore it open, revealing a small black USB drive and a note in Dad's handwriting. He scanned the note, and I saw a flicker in his eyes, a crack in his professional facade. Harris spoke, his voice quieter now. "This is a video recorded by Robert Bennett before the final version of his will. He instructed it to be played only if the reading became contentious." He glanced at Claire, then George, his eyes sharp. "I've verified the signature and timestamp. Legally, I'm obligated to play it." Claire let out a shaky laugh, her confidence faltering. "This is ridiculous." "He never mentioned a video." Uncle George nodded. "Could be fake for all we know." But Harris didn't respond. He plugged the USB into his laptop, and the screen lit up with a simple play button. The air grew thick, oppressive. I gripped my chair's armrests, my breathing shallow and unsteady. Ethan sat still, eyes on the screen as if he knew what was coming. The final message. The screen flickered, and there was my father. He sat behind his old oak desk in his home office, wearing the navy sweater I'd given him 2 years ago, a sweater I didn't know he'd ever worn. He looked older, his silver hair thinner, his once rigid shoulders slightly stooped. But his eyes, though tired, were sharp and determined. He looked into the camera and said, "Hello, Sophie." I stopped breathing. My name, from his lips, felt like a miracle. "If you're watching this, I'm gone and things didn't go smoothly at the reading." He paused, his hands trembling slightly as they clasped together. "I know what the family thinks of you. I know what they've said. And I know what I've said about you. I was wrong." My blood roared in my ears, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break. He continued, his voice rough. "I believed Claire. I believed George. I believed you left because you didn't care. I didn't ask questions. I didn't listen. You tried to tell me, but I shut the door on you and Ethan. I was wrong to do that." I heard Claire shift, her chair creaking sharply. But I couldn't look away from the screen. Dad went on. "I thought strength meant pride, never bending. I thought you leaving was betrayal. But you, Sophie, you're stronger than I ever was. You left to protect Ethan, to give him a better life. You did what I couldn't." Tears spilled down my cheeks. I didn't realize I was crying until Ethan squeezed my hand. Dad's voice softened, his eyes glistening. "I met Ethan one day, just the two of us. He didn't say much, but when I asked about you, itching to know more about you, he said one thing. My mom is the safest place in the world." I clapped a hand over my mouth, choking back a sob. Ethan's words, through my father's voice, cut through every wound I'd carried. Dad continued, "I lost you, Sophie. I lost my daughter because I was too busy being right to love you the way you needed. But I won't let my final act be pushing you away again." The room gasped as he said, "I changed the will. The Bellevue house, the savings, the retirement fund, they're yours, Sophie. And a college trust for Ethan. It doesn't fix what I broke, but I want you to have the peace I couldn't give you." Claire shot to her feet, her chair crashing to the floor. "No way!" she shouted, her voice breaking. Uncle George slammed his fist on the table, his face red. "This is a scam. He'd never do that. But Harris raised a hand, silencing them. Dad's voice grew firm. If they're angry, let them be angry. You earned this, Sophie. You survived it all and never stopped being a mother. That's more than I ever managed. He leaned closer to the camera, his voice nearly a whisper. I'm proud of you, Sophie. I love you, always did. I just didn't know how to show it. Take care of my grandson. Tell him thank you. The screen went black. A heavy, sacred silence filled the room. I sat there, hand over my mouth, tears streaming down my face. Claire stood frozen, pale. Uncle George stared into space, his cigar forgotten on the table. No one spoke. They couldn't. My father's words, clear and undeniable, had changed everything. Truth speaks. Harris closed the laptop, his voice soft. There'll be some paperwork, but everything's in order. He looked at me, a rare smile on his lips. Congratulations, Ms. Bennett. Claire grabbed her purse and stormed out, Neil trailing behind her, muttering. Uncle George lingered, jaw clenched, then left without a word. The others, Cousin Paul, Dad's old friends, filed out quietly, some avoiding my eyes, others offering hesitant nods. Soon it was just me, Ethan, and Harris in the vast room. I leaned down and kissed Ethan's forehead. He looked up at me, a small smile in his eyes. I did the right thing, didn't I, Mom? He asked. I laughed through my tears. You did more than the right thing, kid. You saved me. We stayed a while longer, letting the peace settle over us. My father's words, I'm proud of you, echoed in my mind, soothing wounds I'd carried for 8 years. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was seen, loved, remembered. A new beginning. As we stepped out of the lawyer's office, Seattle's rare sunlight filtered through the towering evergreens lining the downtown street, casting dappled shadows on the sidewalk. The warmth on my face felt like a gentle promise, a stark contrast to the cold, sterile air of the conference room we'd just left. Ethan held my hand, his small fingers steady now, no longer trembling. His steps matched mine, confident and light, as we walked toward our beat-up Honda parked a block away. 10 years old, he carried a quiet strength that made me feel like I was the one leaning on him. For the first time in years, I felt like I was stepping into a new chapter, one I hadn't dared to imagine. The Bellevue house, the savings, Ethan's college fund, they were ours now. The weight of that reality hadn't fully settled. It wasn't just about the money or the sprawling mansion overlooking Lake Washington. It was about what they represented, my father's acknowledgement, his regret, his love. Those 3 words, I'm proud of you, echoed in my mind like a melody I'd forgotten, soothing wounds I'd carried for 8 long years. Ethan's 7 words, you forgot the video he recorded, had done more than secure an inheritance. They'd unearthed a truth I thought was buried forever, given me justice, and pieced back together a part of my heart I'd believed was lost. I glanced down at Ethan as we reached the car. His brown eyes sparkled in the sunlight, and a small, knowing smile played on his lips. You okay, Mom? He asked, his voice soft but steady, like he was checking on me the way I always checked on him. Better than okay, I said, ruffling his hair. Thanks to you. I opened the car door for him, and he climbed in, tossing his backpack onto the back seat. As I slid into the driver's seat, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were still red from crying, but there was something new in them, a spark, a lightness I hadn't seen in years. I wasn't the same Sophie Bennett who'd walked into that office an hour ago, bracing for rejection. I was someone who'd been seen, heard, and remembered. The drive back to our modest apartment in Renton was quiet, the kind of silence that felt full, not empty. Ethan stared out the window, watching the city blur by, his hands folded in his lap. I wondered what he was thinking about the video, about his grandfather, about the future that had just shifted beneath our feet. I wanted to ask, but I let him have his moment. He'd carried so much today, more than any 10-year-old should. He'd been my anchor, my warrior, my truth-bearer. As we pulled into the apartment complex, the reality of our new life began to sink in. The Bellevue house wasn't just a building. It was a symbol of everything I'd run from, the opulence, the expectations, the weight of the Bennett name. Could I really go back to that world? Could I walk those marble halls without hearing Claire's venom or my father's silence? And what about Ethan? He'd grown up in our cozy, cluttered apartment, surrounded by secondhand furniture and love. Would a mansion change him, change us? I turned off the engine and looked at him. Ethan, what do you think about all this? The house, the money, everything? He tilted his head, his expression thoughtful. It's a lot, he said finally. But it's not about the stuff, right? It's about Grandpa saying he was sorry, that he loved you. His words hit me like a warm wave, washing away my doubts. I nodded, my throat tight. Yeah, buddy. That's what matters. We climbed the stairs to our apartment, and as I unlocked the door, I felt a strange mix of relief and anticipation. Inside, the familiar chaos greeted us, books stacked haphazardly on the coffee table, Ethan's soccer cleats by the door, a half-finished article open on my laptop. This was our world, small but ours. The idea of leaving it for the Bellevue house felt both thrilling and terrifying. Over the next few days, the paperwork began. William Harris called to arrange the transfer of the estate, his voice warm and professional. It's all straightforward, he assured me. The house is yours, free and clear, along with the savings and Ethan's trust. Your father was meticulous. I thanked him, but my mind was already racing ahead. The house needed maintenance, inspections, decisions. The savings could give us security, maybe even let me take a break from freelancing to write the book I'd always dreamed of. Ethan's college fund meant he could aim for any school, Harvard, Stanford, or somewhere smaller, wherever his heart led him. But with the windfall came new challenges. Claire didn't stay silent for long. 2 days after the reading, she left a voicemail, her voice dripping with barely contained rage. This isn't over, Sophie. You don't deserve this. I'll fight it. I deleted the message, but her words lingered, a reminder that the Bennett family drama was far from finished. Uncle George, too, sent a curt email, hinting at legal options to contest the will. I wasn't surprised. They'd built their identities around being the chosen ones, the keepers of Dad's legacy. To them, my inheritance was an insult, a theft. I didn't want to fight, but I wouldn't back down either. For the first time, I felt entitled to what was mine, not just the money, but the truth. Dad had seen me, and that gave me strength. I hired a lawyer of my own, a sharp young woman named Rachel who specialized in estate disputes. They've got no case, she told me over coffee. The video is airtight, and your father's intent is clear. Let them try. Her confidence bolstered mine, and I began to see the future not as a battle, but as a canvas. Ethan, as always, was my compass. One evening, as we sat on the couch eating pizza, he asked, "Are we gonna live in Grandpa's house?" I hesitated, unsure how to answer. "Do you want to?" I asked. He shrugged, picking at a pepperoni. "It's big and fancy, but it's not home. Home's where you are, Mom." His words melted me, and I pulled him into a hug. "Then we'll figure it out together," I promised. The next week, we visited the Bellevue house. It was as grand as I remembered, white columns, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the lake that stole your breath. But it also felt like a museum, cold and impersonal. Ethan ran through the empty rooms, his sneakers echoing on the hardwood. "It's like a castle," he laughed, but I saw the hesitation in his eyes. This wasn't our world yet. Standing in my father's old office, I ran my fingers over the oak desk where he'd recorded the video. I could almost see him there, his tired eyes, his trembling hands. I closed my eyes, letting his words wash over me again. "I'm proud of you." For so long, I defined myself by his rejection. Now I had a chance to redefine myself by his love. Back at the apartment, I started making plans. I'd sell the house, I decided. It was too big, too loaded with memories. The money could buy us a cozy home in a good school district with a backyard for Ethan to play soccer. I keep freelancing but carve out time for my book, a memoir about family, forgiveness, and finding your way. Ethan deserved a future where he could dream big, and I'd make sure he had it. As the weeks passed, I felt lighter, like I was shedding the weight of years spent in the shadows. Claire's threats faded, her legal challenges crumbling under the weight of Dad's video. Uncle George retreated into silence, his bluster gone. The rest of the family kept their distance, and I was okay with that. I had Ethan, my rock, my light, and I had myself stronger, braver, whole. One crisp morning, Ethan and I took a walk by Lake Washington, the water glinting under the autumn sun. He kicked a pebble along the path, then looked up at me. "Mom, do you think Grandpa's watching us?" I smiled, my heart full. "I think he is, buddy. And I think he's smiling." Ethan grinned, then ran ahead, his laughter echoing. I watched him, my son, my hero, and knew that whatever came next, we'd face it together. The future stretched before us, wide and open, full of possibilities. I wasn't just Sophie Bennett, the outcast daughter. I was Sophie, the mother, the writer, the woman who'd found her truth. And with Ethan by my side, I was ready for anything. 5 lessons from my journey. As I stand at the threshold of this new chapter, I've had time to reflect on what this journey has taught me, and I want to share these lessons with you, hoping they light a spark in your own path. First, truth always finds a way. Even when buried under years of silence or drowned out by others' lies, the truth has a stubborn way of surfacing. Ethan's courage in revealing my father's video showed me that honesty, no matter how delayed, can heal old wounds. Second, strength isn't about staying, it's about knowing when to leave. Walking away from my toxic family wasn't weakness, it was survival, a choice to protect Ethan and myself. Third, love speaks louder than rejection. My father's final words, "I'm proud of you," outweighed a lifetime of his silence, reminding me that love, even late, can rewrite your story. Fourth, children see what adults miss. Ethan's wisdom, his quiet faith in me, carried us through. Never underestimate the clarity of a child's heart. Finally, you are enough just as you are. For years, I felt invisible, unworthy of my family's approval. But I learned that my value doesn't depend on their validation. It shines in the life I've built, the love I give, and the resilience I've shown. These lessons aren't just mine, they're for anyone who's ever felt pushed aside, misjudged, or silenced. Your voice matters, your story matters, and your truth will find its moment. If this story touched you, if it stirred something in your heart, please give this video a like, it helps others find it. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they're not alone, that their struggles are seen. And if you want more stories of courage, redemption, and truth, hit that subscribe button and join our community. Together, we can amplify the voices that deserve to be heard. Thank you for listening, for being here, and for believing in the power of stories. Stay strong, stay kind, and keep shining.